And welcome to another bookish video from me, Johanna, me, my dog and books. Today we are going to talk about winter thrillers. I was going to do horror, but I might keep that as a separate one, which I can do in the new year, or let me know if you want. There may be some of my suggestions here that are a little bit darker, but I will flag if that's the case. I have 10 winter thrillers to talk to you about, 6 of which I've read and 4 I was looking at my notes. 3 of the 4 I own and one of them I want to get a hold of, so 4 of them are on my TBR. So I'll start with all the ones I've read, and in no particular order. It's just I was going through my Goodreads and looking at some of the ones that I've read. The first one is The Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. This was actually my first Darcy Coates. I've maybe read 3 by now, but I would say I've had mixed thoughts on some of the Darcy Coates I've read. This one, however, was a good one. I mean, look at the cover. It pretty much says thriller in winter. This one is technically deemed mystery thriller, also with a bit of horror, so it is a wee bit dark, so bear that in mind. So in this one, there's a snowstorm and people are trapped. To be exact, Krista and 8 strangers are trapped in a remote mountain cabin. Then their tour guide is gruesomely murdered, which obviously alludes to the fact that someone in this group is a crazy killer. I don't think there's any other type of killer, is there? Maybe, I don't know. Don't judge me on that, it just came out of my mouth. So with pretty much zero escape and trust amongst the group dwindling, Krista, the main character, must uncover who is the killer amongst them before A, the snowstorm, or B, the killer, ends them all. This was everything I wanted in a thriller. It has got a bit, so the probably horrific elements are more in the kind of darker thriller realm, and obviously there's a bit of gruesome murder. It was just great. It's everything I wanted in a thriller. Pacey, setting, isolated setting, kind of locked room murder mystery, really, but you know, kind of darker than your bog standard murder mystery. So if anyone out there has actually read many more Darcy Coates and knows of any of her books that are more of this ilk, let me know in the comments, because I've read 1 or 2 since then and did not enjoy. Then we have a favourite thriller writer of mine. Most of her books are hits, to be fair, but there are some misses. This one wasn't one. It's not my favourite Alice Feeney, but it is a good winter one. It's Rock, Paper, Scissors. You follow a couple, Adam, who's a writer, and Amelia, his wife, who are kind of at that 10-year mark in their marriage, and things are a little bit, they're just struggling. So they head on a wee getaway together to the Scottish Highlands. And they stay in a secluded old chapel in the middle of nowhere in the Scottish Highlands, and things start to unravel, and truths and trusts start to crumble between the two of them. So, you know, it's got isolated Scottish Highlands in the winter, recluded setting? Recluded? Secluded setting. So, you know, tick, 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 tick for the winter thriller vibes. There's multiple POVs in this book, so multiple points of view, and often what Alice Feeney does, not always, but often, is, you know, the chapters switch the points of view. There was times though I did think, oh, there's quite a lot, multiple POVs here, maybe more than needed, but personal opinion, that might not bother you. But it did get to the point where you're like, oh, there's so many unreliable narrators here, I don't know who to believe. There was also a bookish element because you had a writer, screenwriter in the story that involved another writer in the story. So I'm here for any books that have like a bookish writer book element within it. Most of the characters are hugely unlikable. That doesn't always like bother me. But like I don't think there was any that were redeeming. So I kind of wasn't rooting for any of them. I just wanted consequences to hit them all. Did I guess in the plot twist though? No. I never saw the ending coming. And that's always a tick in my box. It's always a win. Good twisty thriller. I did think there was maybe parts of it, and you know, to be really picky, that dragged a little bit, but overall, page turner. I consumed it really quickly, so another great one for winter thriller vibes. Next is The Drift by CJ Tudor. This was also my first CJ Tudor book as well, and I can confirm it's not been my last. I think I read The Burning Girls after this, and I can't remember if I read another one. But I read this in January last year while I was on my snowboarding winter holiday, and yes, this was perfect for that kind of holiday. Well, actually, any winter sort of reading time, because I do like to be a bit of a seasonal reader. So in The Drift, it's a bit of a twisted, gruesome thriller, so it is on the darker side. And we have another snowstorm, which traps people. So there's a collection of people that are stranded in different parts of this kind of mountain. So to keep me right, I'm going to read my own synopsis of this book when I reviewed it on Goodreads. It says, a snowstorm traps Hannah and others in a wrecked bus. Then we have Meg. She wakes up in a dangling cable car with amnesia. Carter fears danger in an isolated chalet as the storm rages, and a killer hides among them. So you've got like these three stories happening simultaneously. Outside, the storm rages. Inside, one group, a killer lurks. But which one, and who will make it out alive? See? It's got all the elements you're looking for. Says me that didn't ask you. I would say this gripped me from the very start, and just the tension builds and builds and builds, and you kind of go different chapters are kind of looking at the different scenarios. You've got Hannah in the red bus, Meg's in the cable car, and then Carter in the chalet. And you're kind of jumping between each of their stories and trying to figure what the heck is going on. And all of it is set in the depths of winter in the mountains. I think it might be the Alps, but I can't remember. And Tudor's writing was really good at just like building on the tension, building and building and building, and I never saw it end, the plot twist coming. And I really enjoyed it. It was just such a good page turner. I also had not only isolated but also a little bit dystopian sort of vibes. It was chilling, it was gruesome, and for me, perfect winter read. Next up is one I read quite a number of years ago. It's called The Winter People. Ruthie's mother has vanished from their off-the-grid remote farm, and then she uncovers Sarah's eerie diary from 1908, which, as she reads it, links her family to a century-old tragedy. As Ruthie delves deeper, she starts to uncover dark secrets that may explain the disappearances, thus preventing history from repeating itself. So this one is very much more on the creepy thriller, teetering on kind of spooky read. And when I look back on my Goodreads review, which was short and snappy, it did say it was kind of teetering between a 3 and a 4, and I think the creepiness and the storytelling kind of nudged it to a 4 out of 5 for me. But what I would say is, apparently I described it as a mashup between Stephen King's Pet Sematary, Sleepy Hollow, and the TV series Stranger Things. So if that's your bag, whatever bag that is, definitely check out. Plus it's called The Winter People, so that says to me it needs to be read at winter. Next up, no surprises for me as an avid Stephen King fan. Well, there's a few that you could read that are set around the winter time, but if I'm sticking more thriller than pure horror, which would be The Shining, I would go for Misery. So you follow an author, now is his name Paul Sheldon? I think that's what's come back to me. Anyway, you follow him. He's on a He's back on his way back in the winter from, I think, an author event or something. Has a car accident, snowstorm. Yeah. Then we have his number one fan, Annie, who saves him from his car accident in the snow and takes him home to look after him. So she transforms from more than his number one fan to now his nurse, and she wants to take care of him. But she also has some beef with author Paul because he was killing off her favourite book series and character, and she was not happy about this. And she wants him to stay and recover and rewrite his book. So she's pretty much keeping him captive in her house in the isolated snowstorm. And she's maybe not the kindest of nurses. This is still one of my favourite Stephen King books. I've read it a good few times and I adore the movie. They're also some of my two favourite characters, like the two of them together. It's just a really disturbing, complicated, compulsive reading relationship to read. I would say because of when it's set, there's maybe some comments towards Annie around her mental health and stuff that's maybe dealt with in a different way because of the year this was written. But with that aside, I think it still really stands the test of time. First published in 1989. Do the math because I can't, but a very long time ago. When I was just going into, not long after me going into high school. So, like one of the other books I talked about, a book within a book. So you've got an author and he's writing a book and you see bits of the book, and so I love that trope, and it is quite a common trope within Stephen King books where there'll be a reference to, not always, but there'll often be a reference to a book or a writer or a story like that. So I'm always here for that. And honest to goodness, every time you kind of watched Paul maybe trying to escape or outwit Annie or anything like that on it, my heart is racing reading it. I'm just like, oh my god, she's coming back, oh my god, she's coming, she's going to know that you moved that. Oh, it's so good. Like, tense is not a stronger word for it. Is not a stronger word for it. Yeah, I think that's what I meant. Actually, I'm going to read you this bit in my review because this is something I learned after the fact when I was reading about some stuff that Stephen King has always said about this book in particular. And it's an interesting one if you were to read that book or haven't read, or if you've never read it and you were to read it, or you have read it, it may make some sense. So King often refers to Annie representing cocaine for him. He confessed to being an addict from the mid-70s to the mid-80s. For him, he deems Misery as a book about cocaine consumption. Anyone reading it without this insight wouldn't even realise this, but if you do read it, knowing that, it gives a very different perspective. Annie Wilkes is cocaine. She was my number one fan, is what he's kind of known as saying. Honestly, the last third of this book, just be prepared to be like, edge of your seat, tense shoulders. And if you haven't seen the film, highly recommend it. Be warned, there's parts in the book that are maybe even more disturbing than the film. So, but still one of my favourite Stephen King's. Next one is called No An Unwanted Guess by Shari Lapena. This one is set in a winter getaway. It's set in a remote lodge and a storm is a brewing. So unfortunately there's a snowstorm, as I mentioned, and the blizzard traps the guests in said lodge and things turn deadly. Basically, they're cut off from the outside world and bodies begin to pile up. And in this instance, although now having told you the synopsis of a few other books, I'm like, oh, something's ringing a bell. In that, guests in the lodge, those that haven't been killed, need to quickly find the killer before the storm or the killer tops them all off. And I have to say, Shari Lapena, I've not read a lot of her books, but some of them, and they're pretty decent thrillers overall, and she is the kind of author that I would kind of pick up. Maybe not quite auto buy, but I would definitely pick up. And this one just, it's It's a good old murder mystery, so maybe not mega gruesome. So if you're not looking for gruesome dark thrillers, I would say overall a decent whodunit. Sometimes in whodunits, my only sort of thing about this one is why it's not like 5 stars for me, or maybe even, it's a decent 3.5, 4 maybe. Is there were an awful lot of characters, and when there's lots of characters, my brain gets confused. I can imagine it like being on it, we kind of read a bit like a TV show whodunit, and that there were so many characters, and I think visually I would probably remember them a little bit easier. But overall, didn't guess the ending. It was a great surprise, and I had a good time reading it. And it's also the setting, secluded, not recluded, secluded, winter, storms, blizzards, and a murderer amongst them. What is not to like? Then there is 4 books that are winter thrillers that I've not read yet. Honestly, this one I have had on my bookshelf easily for about 3 or 4 years, and I still haven't read it because I keep like going, I need to read that and I'll read it in the winter, and then I forget until I'm really close to winter again. So someone remind me if I don't pick this up. So it's One by One by Ruth Ware. Also, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, or if you've got any of your own winter thriller recommendations, both for me and for anyone else watching. This one, we have a retreat in the mountains once again, but this is a corporate retreat. But then there's an avalanche which traps the 8 co-workers together. For me, nightmare. Who wants to be trapped in a chalet with co-workers? No offence, I love many of my co-workers, there's many I don't though, so I never want to be trapped. I never want to be trapped anywhere with 8 people, to be fair. And obviously them being in this really isolated trap scenario unleashes dark secrets and deep tensions among them all. And this is where survival starts to override teamwork. The question isn't about who to trust, it is about who will survive and make it out alive. For me, this sounds great fun. It also sounds terrifying because I would never, I mean, I would never go on a chalet retreat with co-workers. So I barely do nights out because, you know, I'm an introvert. I don't like to spend time with other people, especially people I work with every day. No offence, any friends that are watching. Hopefully not. But yeah, corporate winter retreat in a chalet. There's an avalanche and you and your co-workers have to work together to get out. Nah, that sounds terrifying. Next one's called Shiver by Allie Reynolds, and I'm sure I picked this up in a charity shop about a year or 2 years ago. And again, it's another one that I definitely want to read in winter. So this could be one that I pick up in January. According to the synopsis, the story is set 10 years after the disappearance of Saskia. And Miller and her former friends reunite in the French Alps ski resort, only to discover they've been lured under false pretenses. Tensions rise and buried secrets emerge. Are you starting to pick up like words and phrases that are kind of very similar in some of these book synopses, or is it just me? To confront the truth about that fateful winter, I suspect 10 years prior, before it's too late. Now, I think it involves snowboarding. Well, the opening line for it says, they don't know what they did. They don't know what I did, and I intend to keep it that way. So there's someone up to mischief here. Having had a look, there's quite a few sort of between 3 and 5 star ratings on Goodreads. I think its average rating is, well, out of nearly 23,000 ratings, it's 3.79, so that looks pretty decent. Plus, the cover is giving me everything I want for a winter thriller. The other one is one that I'd seen, I think I've seen it like on Bookstagram and Book Talk a little bit. I have no idea what it's about, other than it looked like it had a wintry cover. So bear with as I read you the synopsis for Moon of the Crusted Snow. So when I'm actually looking at it, I mean, winter cover, if anything. It also says Moon #1. So it sounds like this might be one in a series, but it doesn't mean you couldn't read it as a standalone. Says me who's not read it, and will confirm I've read it. So in this one, it says, because literally, other than the cover and the title, I know nothing about this book. and don't even have it on my shelf, so I'm reading this synopsis. It says, when a remote Anishinaabe community loses power and supplies dwindle, tensions escalate as outside visitors exploit the chaos. Sounds a bit like Amish, but it's not Amish. Led by Evan Whiteskey, a group turns to their traditions to rebuild resilience and restore hope amidst the collapse of modern society. Okay, so that one is on my, I mean, it gets pretty decent ratings. Out of nearly 33,000 ratings, it gets 3.85, which is more than Shiver. It says, slow and ominous, haunting and powerful. It's a pandemic. Is a pandemic the best time to be reading? Oh, someone's obviously read that, June. This was terrifying, but there's quite a few, so it's only 213 pages, so there's a short one for you. And a few people have said it's slow, so I think if you go in knowing that it's a slow burn, and it did win best sci-fi fiction novel. Well, why is this coming up as a thriller? Horror and dystopian thriller? Oh. Okay, so maybe you're getting 9 winner thriller recs, because I'm not sure this one counts, but there you have it anyway. Then the next one is one that I own. And was I slightly influenced to get it because of its spreadsheets? Yes, because it's like, I mean, look at the cover. So this is Breathless by Amy McCulloch, which sounds like a very Scottish name if you ask me. So let's check if she is Scottish. Amy McCulloch is a Chinese white author of 8 novels for children. She became the youngest Canadian woman to climb Mount Manaslu in Nepal. Amy McCulloch is a very Scottish name. I wonder what her, like if she's got any ancestry. Well, it's Canada, so, you know, Nova Scotia. Anyways, it says there's a killer on the mountain and you might be next. When you're this high up, no one can hear you scream. When struggling journalist Cecily Wong is invited to join an expedition to one of the world's tallest mountains, it seems like the chance of a lifetime. She doesn't realise how deadly the climb will be. As their small team starts to climb, things start to go wrong. There's a theft, then an accident, then a mysterious note pinned to her tent. There's a murderer on the mountain. I mean, you couldn't catch me camping on a mountain anymore. The higher they get, the more dangerous the climb becomes, and the more they need to trust one another. And that's when Cecily finds the first body. Sounds quite good. And it's been loved by quite a few. Claire Douglas, Matt Haig, Abigail Dean, Sarah Pearce. Anyway, so that there, with Moon of the Crusted Snow being a slight anomaly based on my clearly poor research, because I didn't do enough checking of that one. I just assumed by the cover and the title. Anyways, but you might still enjoy it, so don't knock it out. Those are all the winter thrillers to put on your radar, most of which I've read. A few are on my TBR, but do come pretty well sort of rated. I would say Murderers on a Mountain seems to be the theme of winter thrillers. So if you have any more recommendations, do let me know. If you've enjoyed this book but don't know what to say, please put a snowflake emoji in the comments. And if you've got any other did I just say that? Any other recommendations, let me know in the comments. I think I might just, oh my goodness, my brain. It's that time of year, so many things to remember. Anyway, so hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you find 1 or 2 recommendations you like. Share any that you've got, or any of these that you've read and what your thoughts are, especially if anyone's read Moon of the Crusted Snow. Let me know if we should read it. And until next time, I will see you in another bookish video. And as always, thank you for liking, for commenting, and if you subscribe, thank you very much. And I'll see you next time in another bookish video.